This video is for documentary purposes only. Anything shown here is in legal states, 100% legal. Nothing shown is harmful or dangerous.
Now, depending on where you live, summertime may be a very, very difficult time to dry your plants. And you may be losing things like thiols, esters, and of course, terpenes. Now in this video, I'm going to break down exactly, of course, what those are, how this temperature and humidity can affect it, and what you can do to fix it, with 10 tips that every grower needs to know. Stay tuned. Now, if you're new here, my name is Rob and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be going over my top tips for drying and curing during these crazy summer swings. Now, of course, it depends on where you live and your specific situation. However, when it boils down to it, you need to be able to make sure that you're dialing in that dry and cure. Otherwise, you're going to be losing some precious components. Now, when it comes to the heat and it comes to the temperature, there's some things that you definitely should know, and some of them get a little bit scientific. Terpenes start to evaporate as low as 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and at 100 degrees, many of those are already completely degrading. A study in 2024 on terpene-infused botanical products found that 92.5% of terpene loss was at just 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, other studies show that monoterpenes like myrcene, B-pinene, and limonene, they take the hardest hit when it's hot. And uncontrolled drying is definitely going to be detrimental when it comes to keeping these terpenes. Now, with humidity, the sweet spot's around 50 to 55% RH, or relative humidity. Too low, like under 45, your buds could potentially overdry, pushing terps into the air. And too high, you're inviting mold, botrytis, and anaerobic funk, and nobody really wants that in their garden. Now, this is where something like VivoSun's dehumidifier will help save your harvest. It keeps the relative humidity stable even in these hot summer days, and it's all over the place here in Michigan, so this has been absolutely life-saving. These harvests would not be able to be nearly as good, and most likely would not even be happening if I didn't have equipment like this. So if you want to save some money and support the channel, use discount code CLtv to save 15% on their website, or CLtv Watch over on Amazon. Now, what are monoterpenes? Well, essentially, they're built from two isoprene units, C10 and C16. These give the bright notes, that citrus pine floral, and they're usually light and more volatile. Now, unfortunately, when it's hot and humid, these are the ones that are going to go first. And then you have things like sesquiterpenes. These are built from isoprene units C15 and H24. They provide those deeper, more savory notes like the earthy, woody, or spicy. They often do better in these swings with humidity and temperature, but as monoterpenes vanish, sesquiterpenes just take over completely. Now, if this ends up happening, it'll oftentimes come up more dull and just flat. It's not going to have the aroma or the flavors that you're after. It's all about that combination, that entourage effect, so to speak. And then you get into the things like thiols, which I've covered in other videos, but to break it down for you, essentially they're sulfur-based compounds and they have crazy potency. You could detect these on parts per billion, and oftentimes you'll get them from that roadkill skunk or that gassy, nasty dank. Now, if you want to learn more about that, I do have a video that you can see up here or in the description that goes over it in a lot more detail. But essentially, these are things you're going to find more in the GMOs, the diesels, the kushes, kind of that funky nose that I'm always chasing. The issue is that they're way more fragile. The heat and oxygen can wipe them out completely, and bag appeal is one thing, but the nose and the flavor and of course the effect are everything for me. Then you have esters, and these are formed when acids and alcohols react. They bring that sweet, fruity, kind of candy note. Now, like thiols, they're definitely volatile and they break down fast in poor drying conditions. And the bottom line is if you lose these thiols and esters, your genetics are going to lose the unique identity. And it doesn't matter how elite your genetics are, if they don't have this, it's just looks. And looks definitely are not everything. Now, here's what you need to do. Keep that temperature control. You want it between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit and the humidity between 50 and 60%. Use a dehumidifier. This is non-negotiable in the summertime. I guess depending on where you live, you may need to use a humidifier, I guess. You need to stabilize this relative humidity despite what's going on outside of the room. Whether this is a grow tent or an entire gross space, you need to make sure that this is dialed in properly. And slow dries oftentimes will help you prevent losing these terps, but if the temperature and humidity are too high, it's not going to help you. Now, gentle air circulation only. You never want to blast the buds directly with air. It's not good at all. Those terpenes also will be blown up in the air with it. Light also can degrade cannabinoids and terpenes overall, so we want to make sure that we're not curing or drying in light. Now, if you do this right, your buds won't just look good, they'll keep that full nose and flavor that really sets them apart from other genetics. But if they don't have the fire and they don't have these genetic traits, unfortunately, you can't just make dank from your environment. That's why oftentimes we'll get the best genetics I can from companies like Seedsman, who provide a ton of different breeders as well as their own genetics. You can use discount code CLTV at checkout to save yourself a little bit of yen and also help the channel. So now that you understand a little bit of that, let's get into these tips. Number one, you want to target low temperatures and low humidity. And this should be obvious for people who've been doing it for a while, but specifically depending on the type of herb that you're going to be drying, you may want to be very, very meticulous on how you're going about it. Now, the classic rule of 60-60 does work for most people, but if you check out the video I put out that breaks down a little bit of a different method how I've been doing it, that may help you even more. However, it's really about drying your flower based on the genetics. So when you're looking at something that's more skunky, earthy, or gassy that has more of those thiols in it, we're going to want to keep it lower, like 60 degrees, maybe even 58 degrees Fahrenheit. As we're leaning more towards the esters, it's going to be heavier on that humidity. We want to make sure we're not exceeding anything past 65% humidity, and honestly, less than that is more ideal. I'd say 60 to 62. Number two, these cannabinoids are going to be lost in spikes more than they're going to be lost in just temperature and humidity that's consistent. Now, when we're dealing with something like a heavy rain or let's say a heat wave, we want to make sure that we keep everything dialed in tight and right. That's where something like an air conditioner or a dehumidifier is going to be optimum. And sometimes, again, depending on your region, it may even be a humidifier. Goku. Sorry about that. You don't want to glance just at your hygrometer. You want to actually pay attention to the data spikes. And when you're looking at the data over time, you may see at night it changes dramatically. And at this point, you can be losing some of those terpenes, thiols, or potentially esters as well. It really, again, depends on your environment. Now, if you're drying in something like the V-Cure, when that comes out, you won't have to worry about it so much. But if you're doing this in a grow tent or an open space, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that consistent humidity and temperature and never having a dramatic swing. My third tip is to make sure that you precondition your drying space. This could be a dry tent or this could be a dry room, but you want to make sure that humidity stays consistent for about 24 hours before you put any plants in there. This is primarily because you may see swings of night and day, and also depending on the temperature and humidity that's outside of that space. Now, oftentimes with these swings in Michigan, we have humidity that goes crazy, especially anytime that I'm harvesting. It seems like the rain just goes bonkers. And at that point, there's not much you can do besides utilize a dehumidifier. But if you don't get to it fast enough, you can struggle and you can run into issues. And at that point, you may end up losing some of these key components of your herb, and that can make it bland, my man, or my lady. My fourth tip is whole plant hang always. Of course, if you got the space. And I know sometimes you can get a faster dry, but faster is definitely not always better when it comes to curing. Also, dry trimming is ideal in this case because again, whole plant, you're going to be able to retain that moisture and have a slower, more consistent dry overall. But when you're chopping this plant down and you're also removing all these fan leaves that are protecting some of the trichomes, the terpenes, and all these other compounds, you can potentially dry it out too fast and have oxygen get to these compounds and completely fry it out. And that's something that we definitely do not want to do at this point in our drying and curing phase. Number 5, low impact air exchange. Now, you may have your grow tent that you're drying in, or you may have an open grow space, but we don't want to be blasting those fans like crazy, and we don't want to be sucking or blowing, no diddy, the air too much. Actually, I don't know if I could say no diddy. I don't want to get sued now since he's about to get released. Anyhow, essentially, we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that's too harsh or too impactful on the flower. Anything that's going to be hitting directly on the buds themselves can, again, put too much oxygen towards those plants or in the flower, and just really dry out that flower and make it brittle and potentially lock in that chlorophyll. And we definitely don't want to do that. Now, when it comes down to it, the low impact air exchange is definitely going to help your plants get that slow, consistent dry and cure, as long as you have that lung room dialed in as well. Number 6, burping jars actually can lose some of your thiols. You want to make sure that you're dialing in this amount that you're doing, and you don't want to be too frequent with it. Because again, too much oxygen can be a big problem when it comes to these thiols. Now, a good option is utilizing something like a grove bag that can definitely help you without the air exchange. You're essentially able to have the CO2 penetrate without the oxygen. And I think that's something that's going to help a lot of people who are kind of timid on their burping process. Thiols are most sensitive between 7 and 10 days. So with that process of burping, it can be difficult to find that sweet spot, but you got to work it out over time, again, depending on the density of the flower you have. Number 7, when you do use a dehumidifier, whether it's a Vivo Sun or whatever brand you're looking at, make sure it has a humidistat on there, because if it doesn't, it's not going to have the proper control to make sure that you're having the consistent RH in your room. Generic dehumidifiers often just have an on and off sequence, and that can cause these spikes, and that's something we absolutely do not want to have. The goal is to have the precision control with these dehumidifiers or humidifiers, and we never want to get too far one way or the other. Number 8 would be store in a dark, cool place always. Now, there's been times, of course, where we're dipping into the cookie jar, and we may have this up, let's say in my office next to my desk, but we do not want to keep it up there. Oftentimes in a basement or in a cool place is going to be the best. Putting it in a dark closet upstairs in a second story, honestly, is probably not a good idea, just because that temperature can get pretty damn hot, and the humidity oftentimes in an upstairs area can increase too. You want to treat your flower in storage as if you were in the same process of drying, and make sure you don't have too dramatic of swings, and you don't want to have too much exposure to light or oxygen. These are things that can ruin your flower overall, and doing all that work to just ruin it right at the end of finish is ludicrous. Now, number 9, this is one that I haven't done myself, but I've been looking into it more, and this is nitrogen flushing your containers. Now, for serious preservation, you want to consider nitrogen flush jars or bags. This can eliminate oxygen, protecting those precious esters or thiols, and it can maintain that quality for a longer period of time. You see more and more of these commercial brands starting to do it, and I do think it's going to become a trend for those of us with long-term storage at home as well. It's just about being able to do this at an affordable rate and something that's somewhat eco-friendly. If you've ever done this, drop below in the comment section. I'm definitely more interested in how we can utilize this in our home grow space. I've seen it in commercial grows, but oftentimes it's not as cheap as you'd think. And last but not least, which honestly probably should have been first, is your harvesting times. Man, oh man, 1 more week? Sometimes that 1 extra week is too much, and it can really be detrimental to that end product. If you go too far, those thiols and that precious point of harvest may evaporate. Your esters may kind of deteriorate, and your terpenes even could potentially over mature. And at that point, you could have some of those bland, cardboard, tap water terps, and nobody wants that. These days, of course, sometimes genetics could be the biggest factor in that, but oftentimes, I swear it's that finishing time. And this is in commercial grows, this is home grows, this is using Athena, this is using organics. It's that finishing time when they pull the plant and how they go about that drying and curing that really makes or breaks it in the end. Now, if you found these tips helpful and you got some extra tips that you may be able to share with your grow me, drop below in the comment section. Now, if you like videos like this, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this with your fellow grow me, and drop your best tip below in the comment section. Appreciate you guys watching, and you can check out this video right here for some more help.